But first, it didn't take long, did it, for the new Labor government to start to look quite different from the safe change Anthony Albanese peddled during the campaign. Sure, the PM was saying all the right things at the Quad meeting in Tokyo today. And yes, the first boat of the new government was turned back to Sri Lanka under the ongoing Operation Sovereign Borders. So 2 boats since Saturday night. But given Labor has junked TPVs in the last few days since they were elected, what's prompted these boats to go back and try and get to Australia? Well, I suspect because there's no TPVs, they know if they actually land on our shores, they'll get to stay here. But this aside, by putting faster emission reduction targets on the table and this urgency now about a vote on an Indigenous voice, Albanese signalled that this government is headed further to the left and faster than most voters realised. You can be absolutely certain that in their push for a bid for Australia to host next year's UN Climate Conference, we're going to see the new government offering to increase its emissions targets. That's what the Greens and the Rich Teals want. And today, the Australian Conservation Foundation and so-called investor group on climate change chimed in, demanding further, faster cuts and making improbable claims about more jobs and lower power prices if that happens now, as if. Labor's use of the emissions intensive safeguard mechanism will indeed be a carbon tax by stealth, as Senator Matt Canavan repeatedly argued during the campaign, but his more senior colleagues failed to take it up because they all thought hiding the truth from voters might sandbag seats against the Teals. I'll have more on that folly a bit later in the show, and some new analysis today that shows just how out of touch these Teal seats are with ordinary Australians. They'll have to live and budget under these new hard-left climate policies that the Teals are demanding. Then there's the bid, not just to have a constitutionally entrenched Indigenous voice, which Malcolm Turnbull even described as a third chamber of the parliament, but now a treaty too. More on the treaty after the break. I mean, this nonsensical idea that a nation can even have a treaty with itself based on race, well, it's now a new division opening up there between the Greens and Labor. Now, in all of these things, the question is, how does the coalition respond? Some moderate Liberals already out in the media saying that not only must the Liberal Party keep its net zero by 2050 promise, it's also now got to roll over on Labor's much harsher 2030 targets. Now, what does that actually mean? As I said, no petrol or diesel vehicles after 2030, up to 82% of our power grid running on renewables, like it or not, in 8 years' time, making power more unreliable and costly than ever before. If you're in the game of making millions out of renewable energy, under all of this, Anthony Albanese will make you even richer because Labor's policy, as it stands, is set to cost taxpayers $75 billion by 2030. So what does the coalition do? Stick to its principles or go further green, as some argue, to try and win back these Teal seats? Even the National Party is not immune to this madness. They're holding talks right now to see whether or not there'll be a challenge to Barnaby Joyce. Meanwhile, the bloke who should be running the New South Wales economy is still moonlighting as an anti-Liberal political commentator. Here's an email that's been sent to me, something that Matt Keane has apparently sent out to numerous New South Wales Liberals, citing an op-ed that he's about to get published, where he not only sprouts falsehoods about his federal colleagues, but also attacks this channel he calls Sky After Dark. Now, by all means, argue a point of view, Matt Keane, but start from the basis of fact and respect the ordinary salary earner who puts your party into office. Honestly, where does the Liberal Party even get these people?